The doors of the mausoleum are sealed from the inside. Gold is stacked against limestone walls. Baskets of figs sit among amphorae of perfume and bundled papyrus scrolls. And somewhere in this tomb she built for herself while still breathing, Cleopatra VII, Queen of Egypt, daughter of Isis. The last pharaoh is deciding how she will die. Outside, Roman boots are on Egyptian stone. Octavian's legions have entered Alexandria. The harbour that once welcomed her gilded barge now hosts warships bearing iron eagles. Somewhere in this city, the body of Mark Antony is still warm. He fell on his own sword hours ago, dragged bleeding to her feet, dying in her arms on the floor of this very building. She is 39 years old. She has ruled for 21 years. She has outlasted brothers, husbands, betrayals, and two of the most powerful men Rome ever produced. But she will not outlast this morning. The only question left is whether Rome will write her ending, or she will. To understand why Cleopatra is locked inside her own tomb, you have to understand what she was before the walls closed in. She was not born powerful. She was born into chaos. The Ptolemaic dynasty, Greek rulers, sitting on an Egyptian throne, was rotting from the inside. Her father, Ptolemy XII, had clung to power through bribes and Roman favor. When he died in 51 BCE, the throne passed jointly to Cleopatra, barely 18, and her younger brother Ptolemy XIII, a boy controlled by palace advisors who wanted her gone. Within 2 years, they had her exiled, pushed to the margins of her own kingdom. Most people in her position vanished from history. Cleopatra did not vanish. She gathered an army in the desert, and when Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria to settle a Roman debt, she saw the opportunity and seized it not with soldiers, but with nerve. The famous but possibly embellished story is that she had herself smuggled into Caesar's quarters, wrapped in a linen sack, unrolled at his feet like a living gift. Whether the details are legend or fact matters less than what happened next. She convinced the most powerful man on earth that her cause was his cause. Caesar restored her to the throne. They had a son, Caesarion, Little Caesar. For a brief, shimmering moment, the futures of Rome and Egypt seemed fused at the hip, bound by a queen who understood that survival meant making yourself indispensable to the men who held the swords. Then the Ides of March, Caesar bled out on the Senate floor, and Cleopatra was alone again. But not for long. The Roman world fractured into civil war, and from the wreckage rose Mark Antony, soldier, senator, one of 3 men now dividing the empire between them. He summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus to answer for her loyalties. She arrived on a gilded barge with purple sails. Silver oars cut the water in rhythm. Incense poured from the deck until the riverbanks smelled of another world. She was dressed as Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and the message was unmistakable. This was not a subject answering a summons. This was a queen arriving on her own terms. Antony was undone. What followed was not merely a love affair. It was an alliance, strategic, dangerous, and deeply human. Cleopatra offered Antony the wealth of Egypt, grain, gold, ships, legitimacy in the eastern Mediterranean. In return, he offered Roman military power and restored territories her ancestors had lost. They had 3 children together. He publicly declared Caesarion the rightful heir of Julius Caesar. In ceremonies that blended Egyptian ritual and Roman authority, they divided kingdoms between their children like cards dealt across a golden table. Rome watched all of this with growing fury. In Rome, a younger man was watching more carefully than anyone. Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, cold where Antony was reckless, patient where Cleopatra was bold. He understood something neither of them seemed to grasp, that in Roman politics, perception was a weapon sharper than any blade. Octavian did not attack Antony directly. He attacked Cleopatra. He called her a foreign seductress. a sorceress, a queen who had bewitched a Roman general and turned him against his own people. It was propaganda of devastating precision because it transformed a political rivalry into a patriotic crusade. Rome was not fighting Antony. Rome was defending itself against Egypt, against her. And Cleopatra, behind the kohl-lined eyes and the ceremonial crowns, behind the incense and the golden thrones, Cleopatra knew exactly what was happening. She had spent her entire life reading rooms, reading men, reading power. She spoke 9 languages. She was the first Ptolemaic ruler in nearly 3 centuries to bother learning Egyptian. She was not the seductress of Roman propaganda. She was the most politically sophisticated monarch in the Mediterranean. But political sophistication cannot stop an armada. September 31 BCE. The waters off Actium, western Greece. The combined fleet of Antony and Cleopatra faces Octavian's navy. It should be a decisive battle. Instead, it becomes a catastrophe. The details are contested and muddied by the victors who wrote the history. But what is clear is this: Cleopatra's squadron breaks through and sails south. Antony follows her. The fleet behind them collapses. Their allies defect. Their army surrenders. The war is not over. Here it continues until 30 BCE, but its outcome is already taking shape. For nearly a year afterward, they retreat to Alexandria and wait for the end they both know is coming. There are accounts of lavish banquets during these months, feasts staged with the desperation of people filling silence with noise. They are reported in some sources to have formed a club they called the Companions of Death, pledging to die together when the moment arrived. When Octavian's forces reach Egypt in the summer of 30 BCE, it unravels fast. Antony's remaining troops desert. He receives a false report that Cleopatra is already dead. In anguish, he drives his sword into his own stomach, but the wound is not immediately fatal. He is carried, bleeding, to the mausoleum where Cleopatra has barricaded herself. She and her attendants haul him up through a window on ropes, refusing to open the sealed doors below. He dies in her arms. She smears his blood across her face and chest, wailing. She is alone now. Truly alone. The last pharaoh of Egypt, in a locked tomb, with the gold of her dynasty piled around her and Roman soldiers on the other side of the walls. Octavian got Egypt. He turned it into a Roman province, the personal breadbasket of the emperor, too valuable to entrust to any senator. He had Caesarion, her eldest son, hunted down and killed. The Ptolemaic dynasty ended not with a succession, but with an execution order. If this stayed with you, subscribe. We tell the stories that empires tried to bury, the ones that survived anyway. More is coming.